We are living in a golden age of Star Trek right now. I mean, just this year we have Picard Season 2, Prodigy Season 1, Lower Decks Season 3, which I'm very pumped about, Strange New Worlds Season 1, and, most importantly, the coming of Captain Pike's beautiful silver fox beard. Y'all, I can't tell you how much I need Anson Mount riding a horse with that beard. I'm gonna be okay. It's gonna be a problem, but already, it's a 10 out of 10 show for me just for that. But while certainly the franchise has had its ups and downs, the series as a whole is thriving, continuing to be a source of inspiration and positivity for that future of humanity that the series has always tried to show, while also boldly letting each new show explore strange new ways of storytelling that Star Trek has never done before.
But today you're risking everything on a seemingly impossible mission to save others, to bring hope to a hopeless cause. Nothing's more Starfleet than that.
But this brings us to the show that began this new era of Star Trek, Discovery. Disco has been the torchbearer for this new era of Trek, trying to discover what Star Trek can be today, while also working to find out what it means to stay true to the spirit of Star Trek. And as a result, Disco has had many stumbles and successes along the way, some of which have been incredibly divisive to Trek fans. Yet in its third season, which brought the series into a new unexplored era of the Trek timeline and canon, I felt like Discovery found its voice finally. While certainly the show's more blockbuster serialized storytelling focus mixed with emotional and bombastic moments, as well as its writing, remained divisive, the show felt, to me and to many Trek fans, fully formed. Let's fly. This is why, with Season 3 ending with Michael Burnham finally taking over the captaincy of the Discovery, and without any baggage to deal with from previous seasons, Season 4 had me incredibly excited because it was the show's chance to solidify what it wanted to be. And that is exactly what Season 4 was. Season 4 heightened and crystallized Star Trek Discovery's identity. It was the most Trek Discovery has ever been, with a focus on prescient political storylines interwoven with truly sci-fi discussions of alien contact, artificial intelligence, and the rigors of command. It also continued to be uniquely Discovery as well, weaving mature emotional discussions into the typically colder Trek franchise, alongside amazing acting and its unrepentant, beautiful ability to not only showcase diversity, but make it feel effortlessly. Why can't I say the word effortlessly? Of course, the irony of that. But make it feel so effortlessly natural and... Damn it, I got the word! But make it feel so effortlessly natural and inclusive. In so many ways, this season proved to me why I adore it and appreciate its unique take on Star Trek. Yet, this confidence in its voice also highlighted the show's most frustrating tendencies as well. So, like a Ferengi hopped up on Beatle snuff, let's go through the ups and downs. Oh, sorry, Sean Ferrick, that's your thing.
Jessie, don't you ever take my bit again. Down.
Let's take a thorough look at Star Trek Discovery Season 4. But before we get to discoing it up, disco, I don't know, I'm just being a dork. Anyways, before we get to discoing it up, I just want to quickly talk to you all about my channel. If you know me, huge Trekkie. I know it's a small thing to pick up on. I know I like to be very subtle about it, but I am a huge Trekkie. And here on this channel, I like to talk about how nerddoms and geekdoms are not only just fun, dorky things that we can all talk about, but also enable us to have conversations about larger social and political issues. So I just want to remind everyone to subscribe if any of that sounds interesting to you, and especially if you're a Trekkie, because I will talk about Star Trek just a tiny little bit. But I assume if you're also a Trekkie like me, I think you probably like to learn things. I mean, us dorks tend to like to learn things. So it's why I like making nerdy educational videos on this channel, like I spoke about before. And because of that, recently I was asked to join Nebula, which is a curated streaming platform that's now Streamy Award nominated that allows me and many of my fellow education-style YouTube creators like PhilosophyTube, Cat Black, FD Signifier, and Foreign Man in a Foreign Land, as well as numerous other people who are just as nerdy as me in sometimes similar and sometimes very different ways, to have a place to make videos that are more outside the box and have access to really cool production resources and opportunities, and most importantly to me, to have a chance to have more financial stability and not have to worry about things like the dreaded YouTube algorithm. Ooh, spooky. I'm sorry. But that being said, one way that Nebula has helped me recently is I actually was able to create an extended cut of my deep dive into the Star Trek franchise. And that version of the video, the extended version, is only available on Nebula. The Nebula version has my thoughts about my favorite Star Trek adjacent franchises like the Orville or Galaxy Quest, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm able to do videos like that because Nebula lets me make them without having to worry about my place on YouTube or worry about my livelihood as a result of a video not performing well. So I just want to say I'm really glad to have the support of both Nebula and my patrons and all of you out there for allowing me to have this platform to be a giant dork on screen and to be able to do all of that while still being able to pay my bills. Like, it really does mean a lot to me. But also on that note, one of the ways that Nebula is itself able to support itself is through its partnership with the amazing CuriosityStream, a subscription streaming service with thousands of documentaries and non-fiction titles. So if Nebula is a place for YouTube education and nerdy style creators like myself to try out new ideas, CuriosityStream is all the big budget professional documentaries. In fact, I spoke about this in one of my previous videos, but one of my favorite docs to watch on there was the first picture of a black hole, about how scientists got the first picture of a black hole. It's kind of in the name. It was a really cool documentary, and there are so many others just like it on CuriosityStream, so it's an awesome service, and even better, Nebula and CuriosityStream have formed together to help each other out. They've worked out a deal where if you sign up with my link below, not only do you get access to CuriosityStream, but you'll also get access to Nebula for free. It's not a trial, it's not a test, but a full Nebula access as long as you're a CuriosityStream member. And also, for a limited time, CuriosityStream is offering an exclusive discount for the annual plan at 26%. So that's less than $15 for an annual plan. So if you sign up for that, you'll get my face, you'll get some nerdy docs, you'll get some Star Trek stuff, and also other cool creators as well. So I cannot recommend both CuriosityStream and then, you know, for my own reasons, Nebula as well. And like I said below, using the URL below to sign up for that really does help me out and helps Nebula and CuriosityStream as well. So it's just kind of a win for everybody and gets you access to some cool nerdy stuff to help you do the learning good. But with all that said, thank you so much for indulging me this moment, and let's get back to the Panic at the Disco. Ooh, people have to have used that before, right? People have asked to use Panic at the Disco to describe Discovery, right? If not, then I'm laying claim to it. It's me. I did it. Okay, so much to talk about, so little time. Time is indeed the fire in which we burn. While Season 3 of Discovery was released during the pandemic, Season 4 was the first completely written and produced in our post-COVID world. And the Discovery writers took the opportunity to use the season's story to speak to that exact anxiety that all of us were feeling as a result of the pandemic. Like previous seasons, Discovery focused on a season-long mystery and Federation-wide threat, this time the strange DMA, a mysterious gravitational anomaly that could wipe out entire star systems and planets in a single moment. Now, we'll talk about how that storyline played out later on, but thematically, the idea of an unexpected event that suddenly affected vast swaths of people in one go certainly echoed our current predicament in the world, and allowed the show to focus on ideas of trauma and mental health that related to what we're going through right now. As I mentioned earlier, one of Discovery's consistent strengths, and what sets it apart from all other Trek shows before it, is its willingness to explore emotions maturely. All the characters on Discovery wear their hearts on their sleeve. While some fans have taken issue with that, even complaining that Discovery is emotional Trek, personally, I adore it. Because while science fiction and Star Trek in general have always been ready to explore the scientific, logical side of our universe, emotions are as much a human frontier to explore as space is. And it goes back to the whole idea of finding the balance between logic and emotion seen all the way back in classic characters like Spock. And so to focus on mental health in the face of COVID-19 is a perfect concept for the show to tackle, and it did so brilliantly, most notably with the characters of Book and Culber. Early episodes of the season saw Book dealing with the trauma of losing his home planet and family, and I love that it wasn't a completely straight line of recovery for him.
You're gone, Michael.
While Book would go through therapy with Culber, who was now taking on the role of ship's counselor, Book would begin to develop ways to handle his grief. But unlike previous treks, where trauma was wiped away at the end of the episode, Book was still grappling with his grief even after developing new coping mechanisms each episode.
Guess I got a lot to work out. What do I do with it?
Well, when the Mandela's finished, it's wiped away.
It was honestly great to see David Ajala's book model how grief and trauma are never a straightforward battle, but one that shifts and slides around as we all struggle with it. The character of Culber too also modeled this differently as well. Wilson Cruz wonderfully portrayed a man who was professional and capable of handling the emotions of others, yet was also burning out and taking on too much upon himself as a result.
This is what Kovic was warning me about. Pushing myself, wearing myself out, failing people.
What he did is not on you.
But it is. I'm responsible for the psychological and emotional health of everyone on board this ship, Book included.
You know that's a completely unreasonable expectation to bear.
As someone myself who often takes on the emotional baggage of others, sometimes to the detriment of myself, Culber's journey of having to come to terms with the fact that you need to take care of yourself in order to take care of others first, honestly hit me really hard and kind of reminded me that I needed to take care of myself. It was Star Trek doing what Star Trek does, teaching and modeling ways to take care of ourselves today, not just in the future. On top of that, I also appreciated that Discovery modeled different ways of therapy for different people. Culber himself was a calm, collected, and empathetic therapist to Book and other characters on the show, but when Culber himself required therapy and needed to hear that he just needed to take care of himself, Kovic came in and just matter-of-factly stated it bluntly.
This is a uniquely challenging time, yes. But if you don't find fulfillment in something other than work, then you will fail those in the chair in front of you. I have a 2 o'clock.
Both versions of therapy can be helpful, but personally, as an autistic person who prefers someone to just bluntly tell me what I need to hear, I appreciate Discovery showing that therapy is not a one-size-fits-all style. On top of handling grief and trauma, Discovery also dove into ideas of generational and community trauma as well, about how pain is passed down through family, communities, and history, not just singular traumatic events.
The Ba'ul culled my people for centuries. My parents died at their hands. Now I sit across from them at the Kaminar Council. I still feel rage.
But you seem so balanced. So calm. I
We're
never
both justified in our anger. Allowing it to be our focus, however, only prevents us from achieving those things which serve the greater good.
We had episodes like Stormy Weather, where Book had to come to terms with how his father treated him out of fear, or Burnham exploring her family tree and history, or the revelation that Species 10C, the creators of the DMA, made the DMA to power their huge protective bubble around them after their original planet was destroyed, choosing to isolate themselves out of trauma and fear, but then going out to perpetuate that trauma onto others out of their fear.
We've lost so many. You and me. But we can't do harm in their names or memories. We have to honor them.
And speaking of that perpetual cycle of trauma, it became a driving force of the story in the season's later half, with Book teaming up with the self-indulgent scientist Tarka to try to destroy the DMA because of the pain they both felt in their past, possibly causing harm to the 10C or even other Federation planets as a result.
Vito, Kahim. Some days I don't even know how to wake up. Love always ends in grief, but we can't let the pain do this to us.
The thematic resonance of the show this season was not only prescient, but with the ending of the season showing us how not isolating ourselves, but opening ourselves up to others and remaining empathetic and being honest with your emotions is what leads to healing, made this season incredibly powerful. Yet these ideas of mental health and trauma were also mirrored by the season's other great strength, its focus on politics. This season smartly decided to add the character of Federation President Rylak, who I immediately adored.
Not that any of you need the reminder, but one of Starfleet's original missions was scientific exploration.
First off, I've always just wanted to explore the more civilian, political side of Star Trek for a long time. Most of Star Trek has focused a ton on Starfleet, and rightfully so, but I feel like the show's message of an optimistic future of humanity shouldn't just be reflected in the pseudo-military version of the future, but also in how civilians enact it as well. And I thought actually focusing on a civilian leader was a perfect choice for the season to do. And Rylak was a great character on her own. As a descendant of Cardassians, humans, and Bajorans within the show's canon, Rylak not only symbolically mirrored the themes of generations overcoming trauma in herself, she was also a complex character in her own right.
With no other options, it would seem that we are done here.
Star Trek has had a long history of obstinate bureaucrat and politician characters who are just there to be antagonists to our main heroes.
I'm sure the authorities will be pleased by your diligence, Captain. I'm not so sure they'll appreciate the way you address a High Commissioner.
I'm in command here, Mr. Ferris.
You are, Captain. For another 2 hours and 42 minutes.
But while Rylak is certainly critical of our heroes and sometimes an obstacle, you always understood where she was coming from. She had every right to question Michael Burnham's decisions throughout the series as she did, and while she was willing to play politics, she immediately gave the sense that she was working for the best outcome for everyone, if sometimes in counterbalance to Michael Burnham.
I don't think I'm out of line in pointing out that my experiences have prepared me for any kind of captaincy.
Well, you saved us. You led your crew to the future. You deciphered the burn.
Yes, I did.
Your acts of bravery are irrefutable. They are also huge swings of the pendulum. And in a time of rebuilding, there is a very fine line between a pendulum and a wrecking ball.
In a lot of the ways, she became the logical counterpart to Burnham's bravado. The Picard to her Riker, or the Spock to her Kirk. Odo to her Quark, if you will.
Whatever it is, I didn't do it.
Don't tell me. Tell the Federation Grand Jury on Inferna Prime.
Maybe not that last one. But while I wish Saru could have fit that role as well, I really enjoyed Rylak in it. She was a wonderfully nuanced character, and Shalala Hashadal, and apologies if I said her name wrong, played her incredibly well. But this nuanced look at all sides of political issues came into every aspect of this season. One of my favorite episodes was But to Connect, where the Federation worlds voted to attack or communicate with Species 10C after their DMA had caused so much harm. Attacking and disarming the DMA was completely understandable considering its threat, and the show made sure to showcase that by having Book, a character that we care about, voice that opinion.
Communication and diplomacy has been the way of the Federation for centuries. I too value those things in normal times, but these are not normal times. Irreparable harm has already been done. We need to defend ourselves.
Yet while Discovery didn't vilify this viewpoint, it also showed true Trek spirit, with Michael Burnham convincing everyone in the Federation that communication and connection were the real answer.
Before we head down a path that could lead to destruction on both sides, we need to reach first for understanding.
It was so wonderfully nuanced and yet still remained true to the messages of Star Trek. Discovery also touched upon other prescient political themes, like in the episode The Examples, which featured a storyline of prisoners being left to die in a crisis, dehumanized and forgotten, mirroring how many prisons in the United States became hotbeds of COVID-19 because we did not care for the humanity of our prison populations, even though many in prisons were there for various reasons, not just because they were bad people. And even if there were just simply bad people that we hated in those prisons, which again is not true, it still doesn't mean that we don't care about them.
You can't ask us to trust you and then treat us no differently than our jailers do. Lower your weapon.
I loved storylines like that, and I adore Discovery for, like Star Trek shows before it, tackling a much needed social issue of today within the future world of the series.
I need to remind you that wherever you find a new home, you'll be arriving as a refugee, seeking shelter and grace. I hope you find a more just society than the one you had a hand in creating.
And the show even went further with its politics with the cameo appearance of the amazing Stacey Abrams, who has been an amazing activist for voting rights and social justice in both Georgia and the United States in general.
There's a lot of work to do. Are you ready for that?
I am. Let's get to it.
She's also, if you heard her talk, just a giant Trekkie as well. And I know some have been angry at Star Trek for featuring a real-life politician, and well, certainly as a leftist myself who has major issues with how the United States political system, regardless of if you're left or right, has continually failed so many people, I get that to some degree. I mean, dear God, I still twitch at the thought of Ronald Reagan visiting the set of Star Trek The Next Generation in the 1980s. If ever there was a man who did not live up to Star Trek's ideals. But to touch upon this really briefly, I do feel like a lot of the people that got vitriolically angry about Stacey Abrams' appearance in Discovery weren't angry about the show being overtly political, because as we all know, Star Trek has always been political, and let's be honest, left-leaning as well. But they were angry because of Abrams' current place within our hyperbolicized culture war politics. To my mind, well, not a perfect person, as no one is, she is one of the best activists out there right now, and I was so glad that she got to be in Trek and get to have a reward for her continued work and also her being a Trekkie. And it continues to prove why I personally love Abrams' Trek. See what I did there? I'm so clever. I'm a good writer. I know what I'm doing. I do some clever wordplay. Anyways, moving on. Also, regardless of who Abrams is personally, seeing a heavier set black woman as president of Earth, hell yes. Love Discovery for normalizing that shit. We need more of that, not just in Star Trek, but in the real world. Speaking of true Trek spirit though, Discovery Season 4 also featured some classic Trek-style sci-fi stories. For example, we got the crew abandoned on a dangerous planet and needing to work together to survive, we got an Arrival and Darmok-style story about communicating with aliens through math, and we even got an episode focused on the classic rights of a new artificial life form discussion that echoed seminal episodes of Trek like Measure of a Man. Yet Discovery took these classic Trek tales and added in its own voice to it, focusing not just on the cold scientific questions within them, but how we would feel about these storylines. For example, in the aforementioned But to Connect, while Stamets was wrong in his push against trusting the growing sentience of the USS Discovery's AI Zora, I love that his fear of Zora came out of a true place of his past trauma dealing with AI.
Add to that the fact that she has unlimited access to all of Discovery's systems, and she's allowing emotion to supersede normal function. The possibilities of where this could go are endless and unpleasant.
Your sole previous interaction with a sentient AI was control, yes?
It nearly destroyed life as we know it. Nothing is worth risking that again.
And I also adored that he was able to overcome his prejudice by recognizing Zora's emotional complexity as well.
I'm trying to understand you. Trying to get my head around how they can be so okay with this and I'm not.
And showcases that often when we talk about these heady science fiction ideas, it's not just the logical side of the argument that we have to think about, but the emotional side of the argument, because that also influences how we interact and engage with these topics. If we look at so much of politics today, a lot of people's reaction to certain laws or ideas being passed comes from an emotional place, not just a logical one. And I really love that Discovery was able to model discussing those things in a very logical and emotional way as well, and I really appreciate the show for doing that. And also modeling not only where these prejudices can come from, but how we can overcome them by understanding and reacting to others' emotions and humanity as well. Okay, humanity maybe not the right word, but like sense of personhood and sentience, I guess, in Zora's case. I also should say that I loved in that episode that Kopech made sure to state that if Stamets hadn't gotten over his bias, it would have been Stamets that would have had to be reassigned, not Zora, because it was Stamets who had the prejudice.
My evaluation was as much about you and the others as it was about Zora. I can see now that partnership is possible on both sides. But if that hadn't been the case, I would have recommended that you be reassigned to another ship.
As it should be.
Discovery is just so great at consistently understanding that it's not on those who suffer prejudice for being different to suffer the consequences. On top of all of this, there were also wonderful small moments of Trek idealism too. For example, I adore that Book's punishment at the end of the season was him having to help those who had suffered from the 10C.
Federation's sending me to help families displaced by the DMA. Not sure for how long, but I know where I'll be.
It's small moments like this that showcase the Federation of the Future's adherence not to punitive justice punishment like the United States has today that was highlighted in the episode The Examples, but restorative justice, which is a great subtle nod to Trek's ideal future. It's also the show modeling how accepting accountability is a necessary part for everyone in a situation, not just those who are harmed or perpetuating it, to begin healing as well. Something also reflected in the ending to the season's story arc with the 10C aliens.
I heard my own voice when I was talking to the 10C about not causing harm. I'm sorry, Michael.
Speaking of prejudice though, I also adore Discovery's continued effortless ability to be inclusive. Discovery is easily Star Trek's most diverse series ever, with so many people of color, different genders, queer folks, and cultures represented. And all that's saying something considering Star Trek's long history of diversity. Yet, even better, Discovery takes these cultures and identities and shows them in a way that naturalizes and normalizes them, not tokenizes them. For example, the queer found family of Culber, Stamets, Adira, and Gray is so adorably woven throughout the season. The four of them consistently back each other up, support each other, and are often somewhat messy, as many LGBTQ found families are.
Fair warning, but I will always reach for you if it seems you're hurting. My dad never did that for me, so I might do it a little extra for you.
Okay. They're just there for each other in a way that queer found families in the real world are as well, and it was so wonderful to see that displayed in my favorite franchise. It meant so much to me. Star Trek Discovery also showed these queer characters interacting regularly with other queer characters like Jet Reno.
Sorry, I'm just thinking about Commander Detmer.
Oh, I see, when Gray's away.
Okay, no, not like that.
So often, queer characters within shows have to represent entire swaths of the LGBTQ community by themselves. Like, I see so many TV shows have queer characters just hanging out with a bunch of straight folks, which we do hang out with the straights. We do that, but come on, many LGBTQ folks are hanging out with other LGBTQ folks. And that is, again, so wonderfully reflected on Discovery. I love that the show just doesn't have one tokenized representation, but a myriad of representations within communities that also intersect with other communities as well. Even further, queer themes are constantly brought up in the show, like with Gray relating his search for a new synth body to his gender transition.
Can we get rid of the mole?
I thought you stopped hating that.
I just asked because transitioning, it's like I had bigger things to think about. But if I get another chance to remake my body, then why not get rid of all the things that aren't totally me, you know?
Or Adira relating their desire to protect Zora to their queerness. Yet while these queer elements are mentioned, they are never hyper-focused on, but just dropped in when they are relevant to a situation. That's how many queer folks in real life also interact as well. We don't go around being like, I guess I'm gonna talk about being trans today. We'll mention it when it becomes pertinent to a conversation that we're having, but it's not our only and sole identifying feature, and Discovery just models that. It all goes to Discovery just making queerness feel like a natural part of the Star Trek world, and again, I cannot tell you how much that means to me as a lifelong queer Star Trek fan. Star Trek Discovery is one of the few sci-fi shows out there that isn't afraid of queerness, but also doesn't glorify or otherize it as well like past Trek shows did, which often coded queerness as alien or different even when it was being sympathetic. Yeah, all this is just me speaking for my community as an LGBTQ person, and while I can't speak for others, I do adore how Discovery continually showcases numerous Black, Indigenous, Asian, Brown, and other characters and cultures authentically and naturally as well. And it also does so by highlighting how this diversity makes us stronger by having different perspectives come together to make us better.
Now, there is a pattern here. We just have to find it.
Well, solving the hydrocarbon mystery required a variety of perspectives. Perhaps that would help us again.
That's so incredibly Star Trek, and I love it. By the way, I know there are so many people involved in making that happen on Discovery, but I want to directly call out both showrunner Michelle Paradise and executive producer Oluntunde Usumsami for consistently doing the work to make that authenticity happen. It is seen, and it is very much appreciated. Oh, also, I've said this about every season since Discovery began, but the technical side of the series is still top-notch. The editing, the sound design, the costume design, the visual effects, the cinematography, and more are all just beautiful. Honestly, my only criticism on that end comes from this season's newest edition, the VR wall. For those of you who don't know, Discovery took a page from The Mandalorian and filmed a lot this season using a giant VR wall. The use of the VR wall lets actors actually see the alien worlds while they're acting, and also saves time in post-production and enables the world within the show to feel more like it's an actual real place. And in many cases on Discovery, it looked great. However, my one issue with the VR wall is that it often creates cavernous yet empty spaces. And that works on a show like The Mandalorian because it's mostly set within a desert, but in Discovery it just made it feel kind of empty at times. This is a small critique though, as it's part of the growing pains of using a new technology, but it was something that I just noticed and I kept thinking about as I was watching the series in terms of its visual look. However, it did allow the show to create cool looking alien worlds like this one. Speaking of technical stuff though, it's also worth mentioning that the acting in Discovery is continually top notch. Every actor on the show is absolutely amazing. I mean, the fact that the show has Doug Jones on it continues to surprise me because he is one of our generation's best character and creature effects actors. Also, by the way, Saru's romantic storyline with the Navarian president, especially in how it showcased finding love in hard times, was so adorable and sweet. Just Saru getting so embarrassed and like kind of uptight and worried was so cute. I just wanted to pinch his little Kelpian cheeks.
Perhaps more than a friendship?
Madam President, may I have a word? Mr. Saru, if you will excuse me.
Oh, the two of them are so gonna pawn far it up, and I love it. Just imagine Saru holding that weird little Vulcan stick thing in battle fighting for his love. Vulcan mating rituals are the best. But of all the actors that I wish to discuss, I want to highlight Sonequa Martin Green and David Ajala together, because I don't think I have ever seen two actors in Star Trek have better chemistry than those two.
Quaconia Yaquan it is.
Quaconia Yaquan.
I said it right the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I love you, you know.
I love you more.
They are electric every time they're on screen, even when they're against each other. They're just so good.
This is really bad.
Okay, so do your empathy thing.
My what?
Your empathy thing, right now. I brought you here to connect with them.
I don't think they want to connect.
However, I've been mainly focusing on my positives of this season of Star Trek Discovery, but I think it's time to get to some of the more frustrating elements of the series as well. Okay, y'all knew I couldn't go a whole video without a costume change of some sort, so I love this Discovery dress. It's one of my personal favorites. However, getting to some of the negatives of this season, as I said before, this season focused on yet another season-long story arc. On the one hand, the DMA offered some wonderful thematic resonance with the COVID-19 pandemic, and also provided a more active problem than the more passive, nebulous mysteries of the Red Angel and the Burn from Discovery Season 2 and 3. The DMA also allowed our characters to feel more actively involved with dealing something right now, with episodes featuring the Disco crew trying to handle the threats, both physical, political, and emotional, rather than just having to figure out some nebulous mystery box.
Our mission today is to evacuate all inhabitants of the Radvec chain. At this point, we are not certain whether the DMA will hit. But what we do know is that in 3.5 hours, all transport off-world will become impossible. So that's all the time we've got.
However, that being said, the DMA was also yet another storyline where the stakes were again set at galaxy threatening, something that pretty much every season of Discovery has done so far.
What is that outcome? A future in which all sentient life in our galaxy has been eradicated.
And to a degree, while I have just come to accept that this style of blockbuster movie-style storytelling is just part of Discovery at this point, I can't help but feel that it often runs counterintuitive to what Discovery is trying to do on multiple fronts. First and foremost, with everything always ratcheted up to 10,000%, it makes it difficult for me to invest in even the smaller moments when everything is so over the top all the time. I don't mind stories feeling like they have stakes, but it's hard to relate to the galaxy-ending threats every single year. For example, I can't help but feel like I've never gotten a chance to see any of our characters on Discovery, even though we've watched them for 4 seasons, in a casual sense. Like, I love Michael Burnham, but she constantly has the weight of the world on her shoulders, rightfully so given the storylines that she's in.
It says a tremendous loss in your formative years has left you with an almost pathological need to save everyone you can.
I fail to see the negative in that.
But despite watching her for over 4 seasons, I've only gotten brief glimpses of her on a normal workday. Like, what does she do on her off hours? I just don't get a sense of the character just living casually, and it kind of distances me from her and all the characters on Discovery. I just don't know what they really do on a normal day, and so it's hard for me to like really sometimes relate to them on a normal personable level. This is why I loved episodes like All In this season, because it slowed things down and allowed us to see Michael Burnham play a game of poker or get involved in hustling at boxing.
Place your bets now. Don't miss your chance to score on Joanne. Oh, wow. Oh, Shakun. The most ferocious fighter this side of Felton Prime.
It was just allowing us to have fun with these characters in a kind of lower stakes environment. And yes, while that episode like All In did have sort of higher stakes going on in the background of it, it honed in our characters doing something more normal and relatable, and made me care for them even more so as a result. So that when the stakes were high, I loved them even more for it. But those moments this season were often fleeting. And this also works in reverse too, making these small scenes not work because of the heightened stakes. For example, in the penultimate episode of the season, there's a beautiful and wonderful scene between Saru and Burnham where the two model stress release by yelling at each other.
I think I needed that.
Honestly, it's a very cringy scene, but in a kind of sweet and human way. And honestly, I would have loved this scene if I wasn't at the same time going, guys, why are you doing this right now when literally the Earth is going to be exploding in 4 hours? Come on, you have things to do! I couldn't get into the scene because the stakes were too high in that moment for me to invest in that smaller moment. I just wanted them to get it over with so we could get back to the bigger, more important things going on, and it felt like the characters were just being negligent. Yet when characters do get an uninterrupted moment to just be themselves, like when Admiral Vance and Tilly just got to sit around and share a drink in the finale since they couldn't help anymore, the acting and writing truly shine because I'm not worried about the world-ending stakes, but just the focus on the moment.
According to the gravitational lensing I saw, 2 hours until the DMA really gets us.
That's more than enough time to get bogged down with life's greatest regrets, right?
It allows me to just be with these characters. Even further, and I know this discussion has been somewhat divisive even within fans of Discovery, but for me, these season-long arcs have never really been paced incredibly well. And season 4 for me just highlighted the problem. I mean, let's just take a look at how the DMA storyline was doled out this year. The first 6 episodes of the season were just the characters going, "What's the DMA? What's the DMA? What's the DMA?" over and over and over again.
Meaning, I have no idea what we're looking at.
We are unable to identify any factors to indicate the presence of tachyons. In the absence of such evidence, your hypothesis remains unproven.
We learned a lot, although not as much as we could have.
Then finally, we learn in the mid-season finale that species 10C caused the DMA, and then it literally takes us the next 6 episodes to actually get to them. 3 of those 6 episodes were just the characters traveling to the 10C bit by bit.
I believe there's an Earth simile, something to do with herding cats.
I can imagine.
Like, don't get me wrong, episodes like The Galactic Barrier were fun, but I can't help but think that the entire episode's plot of traversing the edge of the galaxy could have been done in like a 5-minute sequence.
Detmer, plot a course. Let's get through the barrier as fast as we can.
It'll be bumpy.
And then after all of this, we get to the finale where everything happens all at once so incredibly quickly, to the point where we actually don't get to focus much time on the actual thing that we've been building up the entire season, getting to interact with the 10C aliens.
I'm not seeing the redundancy and patterning I'd expect from language either.
You're saying it's not a language?
It may be, but it's unlike any I've ever encountered. We lack the tools to understand it, in which case it may as well not be.
Further, this adherence to this season-long story arc also grinds character arcs pacing to a halt. I mean, 4 episodes of the season featured Tarka and Book doing the same song and dance over and over again. Book is conflicted about betraying Burnham, and Tarka convinces Book that attacking the DMA or Species 10C is right.
In time, I do believe Burnham and others will understand.
Maybe.
It was the same beat being hit again and again, but it couldn't advance because the writers wanted to save Book realizing that Tarka was wrong for the finale. Where personally I feel like that storyline would have been resolved either with Book coming to his senses or Book just being full on in with Tarka earlier on in the season, but they just had to keep the conflict within Book just going and going and going until it didn't really progress and kind of just stalled out. I just feel like these galaxy ending stakes storylines that need to be solved only in the finale drag the season out and hurt the series' overall pacing. Also, I'll just be honest here, I really don't feel like Discovery does mysteries all that well, at least not enough to justify the intense buildup that they give it. Every season of the show, they put so much emphasis on the mystery, like, ooh, what is the Red Angel? Ooh, who caused the burn? Ooh, what's the DMA? That ultimately the payoff always just feels disappointing.
The universal translator won't be helpful.
And this isn't to say that the payoff is bad. I think that a lot of the payoff has been good. I mean, I actually like the way the show used Species 10C this season to discuss trauma and emotion and how to communicate those things.
Simply put, they're trying to teach us a bridge language, such as Linkos.
Exactly.
Linkos?
A language based on math.
But it's just that the payoff isn't justified by the amount of build-up to it. If the show lowered the stakes, or shortened the mystery to just a few episodes, or didn't hyper-focus on it every single episode, making it the most important thing in the world, I think that there would be less disappointment. Again, this isn't to say that the payoff to the mysteries is bad, just that they don't live up to the expectations that the series had set. And so it ultimately leaves me, at least, feeling a tad disappointed in the end, because I didn't get this sort of big grand thing that I had been told to expect. Now, those are more structural problems that I saw with this season, but there are a few smaller scale problems as well. Tarka, for example, as the season's villain, was a mixed bag for me. I actually really liked that he seemed to be a stand-in for tech bro billionaires in a way. A scientist who is so full of himself that he comes across not only as rude, but uncaring about others' feelings on a situation, believing himself to be the only one who understands, and thereby making decisions that hurt others in the process without realizing how he's affecting others. Overemphasizing his perspective to the exclusion of all others, sort of going right against that idea of infinite diversity and infinite combinations of Star Trek.
Freelic's a political animal. Once the DMA's gone, she'll face political pressure to pardon us. She'll find a way to explain that in this case, the ends justified the means.
Yeah, and I also enjoyed that while that was clearly being criticized with his character, that the show gave him nuance with his beautifully tragic storyline with his friend and possible love interest, Oros, showing that he too was acting out of trauma, even if it enabled his selfish desire to get the DMA power source to heal that trauma.
You shouldn't blame yourself for leaving him behind.
Not a day goes by that I don't.
I hope he's out there. And you get to see him again.
Along the way, we'll stop the DMA and save billions of lives.
Yet, despite all these things that I liked about Tarka, he never really completely worked for me. Partially, I think it was due to that pacing of his storyline that I was talking about earlier, but also because I think his callous disregard for others never completely rang true for me, especially in the end. While it did sort of fit the tech bro idea, he just constantly seems to be at odds with listening to reason, even when that made no sense for his character. Like, why would he not let Discovery have a week to figure out if they can stop the DMA in the episode Rubicon? Why did he even believe that he could get the DMA power source to begin with by turning it down? Why did he not give a crap about the destruction of Earth and Navarre in the finale?
We both have so much at stake here. You can't just decide that
This is a viable compromise.
Or it's a lie!
The show could have made those character choices work if given time, but the way he was written in the season's latter half just made him come across as obstinate and unreasonable and kind of ran counterintuitive to his characterization of an intelligent man. However, another element that Tarka's writing highlights is how Discovery sometimes overtells rather than shows. For example, the episode The Galactic Barrier beautifully showed us Tarka's backstory, but it wasn't as powerful as it could have been because we had already been told his backstory earlier in the season by Tarka himself.
We were held in the same lab. Osira had us working on dilithium alternatives for years, but he was relentlessly optimistic. Eventually, it rubbed off on me, and we had a plan. We knew exactly how much power we needed to cross the gap between universes.
And this is something that Discovery likes to do sometimes with characters beyond our main heroes. Have them spout their backstory off at inopportune moments rather than having their actions speak for them to showcase their character. For example, the background bridge crew members throughout the season had numerous moments where they just paused in the middle of a crisis to give their backstory.
Captain, thank you for letting me do this.
I can tell it means a lot to you.
My town was wiped out by a hurricane when I was 5. The Starfleet crew got us out. So, I get what this is like for them.
Before we go, I owe you an apology. When I was younger, my best friend got sick. She needed more help than our community's healers could give.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I've just never felt my dad.
Don't get me wrong, these backstories are interesting, but like, why are you telling me this now? Reese, you are leading an evacuation, my man. Now is not the time for me to hear about your parents. Hey, Captain, I know we're all about to die in a minute, but I just wanted you to know that this situation kind of reminds me of that one time where I was a kid where I nearly fell off a cliff and it caused me. Do you see what I mean? And it also goes back to that idea of world-ending stakes all the time. Like, these moments would work better if the stakes weren't always so high. And I think these scenes of doling out backstory are the writer's reaction to fans wanting to know more about characters like Detmer, Owo, Reese, and Bryce. Cause they are cool, and the actors are great, and I do want to know more about them. But I'd much rather learn about who they are through the plot and story at hand, like how Detmer got to do a few times in season 3 and 4, rather than them just spouting off their backstory at times.
It wasn't well. It's a disconnect between him and reality.
Another good example of the show actually doing that, by the way, is the subtle Detmer-Owo romance, or friendship. You could go either way, they haven't confirmed it either way, but just in the acting and editing surrounding the characters of Detmer and Owo, you can see that the two deeply care about each other, and none of that needs to be overtly stated or told to us, it's just clearly evoked to us by the acting, writing, and editing. My final major criticism, though, goes back to the show's more blockbuster feel. Because Discovery feels a need to have these heightened moments and stakes, it sometimes uses writing cheats in order to get there. For example, the show will often raise the stakes unnecessarily to make things seem even more emotionally intense. For example, in the finale, to try to escape the 10C bubble, we learn this.
But it would burn out the spore drive in the process, which we won't be able to repair without space dock.
Meaning we'd have to warp home.
It would take decades.
That's the bad news.
Oh no, Discovery will have to spend decades getting home. That would be an interesting consequence for the actions of this season. Only for that not to matter in the end.
They are using the DMA wormhole one last time.
We're going home.
Oh no, the Earth General Odoye may sacrifice herself in the end, earning redemption for the problems that she caused earlier on. But nah, she won't, it's all fine, she's okay.
I haven't had that close a call in quite a while.
I would consider it a personal favor if that were your last close call.
It's just over-heightened drama that doesn't ultimately pay off. But I think the worst example of this is the fake-out death of Book in the finale. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want David Ajala to leave the show, and the moment where Book fails to materialize on the bridge is amazingly portrayed by Sonequa Martin-Green. I honestly think it was the best acting moment of the entire season. The emotional beats she goes through at that moment are excellent. We see her pain, then we see her pulling herself together for a moment, then her breaking apart at hearing that Book is dead, and then having to steel herself to finish off the mission.
Let's go finish this.
Sonequa Martin-Green just nails that sequence, and it just broke my heart watching it. But then it's completely undone 5 minutes later when we learn that Book is fine because the 10C just chose to intercept his teleporter, despite the fact that they didn't do that for Reno or Tarka.
Where am I? What happened?
It's clearly just done so we can have this big emotional moment in the finale for Michael Burnham, and it's sold well because Sonequa Martin-Green is a fan-fucking-tastic actor, but it still comes across as cheap. There's no ramifications for it, there's no long-lasting consequences for Book having appeared to die in that moment. It's just there to have a gut punch for Sonequa Martin-Green, and then we move on. It's disappointing because the show has shown me repeatedly that it can do emotional truth so well. And the stakes are already high enough that we don't need these cheap moments to just heighten the drama. But it goes back to the show's need to have the stakes constantly be at the highest they can be at all times. And it undermines the trust the show has worked so hard to, and did, earn. So with all that being said, looking at the positives and negatives of Season 4 of Discovery, what do I think of this season as a whole? For me, personally, I do think that this is Discovery's best season yet. In so many ways, I think this season highlighted exactly what I love about the show and perfected it. Themes of overcoming trauma and finding connection, exploring human ideas of emotional truth amidst scientific exploration, and questioning what it means to build a coalition of diverse individuals, both on a political and individual level, were beautifully explored. And the show managed to do all of that in a way that felt not only relevant, but prescient and necessary to those of us going through the COVID-19 pandemic. But in a way that will still probably speak to generations that watch this show after us. Mental health will never go out of style, and the show also just evoked so many wonderful Trek ideas that I love it so much. Yet, this season also underlines some of the same problems that have plagued Discovery since its inception. While the show has worked to shore up some of its weaknesses, and there's a distinct improvement over how these same issues presented themselves in seasons 2 and 3, they're still there. And I really hope that next season they can get rid of them altogether. But all that being said, that's Star Trek, right? Every Star Trek show has its unique strengths and weaknesses. I love Star Trek not because it's perfect, because it never has been. But I love it because it strives to be. And that's what Trek is all about. Discovery displays everything I adore about Trek. Optimism, hope, belief in the betterment of ourselves, a delight in diversity and differences, and it also adds its own unique perspective on all of those things, being an example of inclusivity and emotional maturity. It's not perfect, but it allows us to have conversations about where it both succeeds and fails, as every Star Trek show has done. And yet it constantly strives to be more than it is. And as always, the effort yields its own rewards. I love Star Trek Discovery, flaws and all, and Season 4 again proved to me why. Oh, also, can we talk about David Cronenberg? Like, what the hell is up with Kovich? I mean, he keeps making 21st century references and time travel nods. I need to know what is up with him. Please, dear God, Discovery writers, if he turns out to be Future Guy from Star Trek Enterprise, I will love you for all time. Don't tease me with this. I need this. I need this. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching this video and my review of Star Trek Discovery Season 4. I hope it's taken in the spirit of constructive criticism and conversation starting in which it was given. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm so looking forward to discussing Star Trek Picard Season 2 and Star Trek Strange New Worlds, because I need my Captain Pike Silver Fox beard. I need it right now. And please don't forget, you can find all of my reviews of Star Trek shows over on Jessiegender After Dark, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any of my video essay stuff. I'm also available on Nebula, and also you can support me over on Patreon. Patreon is how I help pay the bills. It is how I am able to continue doing videos and in-depth things like this, because I know videos like this won't do super well in the algorithm, but I wanted to make it, and I hope all of you appreciated it. And again, Patreon is what allows me to do some of these more algorithm testing videos that may not do well on YouTube. So thank you to all of my patrons for supporting me being able to pay my bills and follow my passions. It really does mean a lot to me. So I love you all. But beyond all of that, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, Nebula, all that jazzy YouTube nonsense stuff that I can never really do very well to promote. But anyways, do it anyways. I love you all though. Oh, also I have a Babylon 5 podcast that I do with my friend Vera Wild over on Council of Geeks. But anyways, beyond all of that, love you all, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper, my friends. Am I wearing a Peacemaker cosplay with glasses underneath the helmet? Yes, I am. Don't think anything of it, because it is time to thank my wonderful patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me doing what I do and being able to buy weird, dumb cosplays like this, and especially an extra special spanking was the word that I almost wanted to say. Extra special thank you to Morgan the Pirate Queen, Joe Herman Holt, Miranda Janelle, Liz Tivy, DJ Samuels, Catherine Lambeth, Ashley Allen, Bo Kiki Yo, Lily Gray, Stephen Kleinard, Jem Shin, Matt Chung, Mary Mello, Randy Thompson, Ellie Gobert, Ish the Mad, Super Desi, D. Ray, Wellington Marcus, Boyd and Mary Beth Earl, Vincent Ellington, G-Man 42, Felicia Toast, Chloe Dollar, Joseph Dewey, Alex Miller, Sylvester Rota, Elizabeth Christensen, James Krivda, Dominic Noble, Barbara Ruski, Jennifer Fuss, Zone 1 Librarian, Jessica Wright, Suck Corgi, Sonia Naroperdo, Neathra Fronton, Peter Landers, Frangato, Transit Toronto, Sasha M, Lee Arthur Boyd, Mountain Harpy, Celestial Dawn, When Dizzle Bizzle, Pissed and Twisted, Garage, Stephen Richardson, Melinda Walters, John Weatherby, Meadow Whisper, W. Brandy Edie, Cyber Quake, Ulysses the Pagan, Beatrix Pruvis, Alex Owen, Kevin Frintag, Tiffany Danger, Lysa, Sean Piper, Casual Observer, Angie Pugh, Gretchen Badger Flynn, Cause I've got faith of the heart. 4. Maggie the Goblin, Audrey Assad, Sarah Leslie Hutchkins, Jess Johnson, William Stewart, Sky Skinner, Sarah Lamoureux, Sarah Bystam, Calisis, Eva Kniva, I'm sorry. Melody Ann Winters Good, Noble Monster Comics, Nathan Steele, Laura Demereux, Verdrix Kai, Jason Knott, Hioresis, Spooky, Heather Sylvia, Troy Stull, Andrew K, Maeve, Polly Mina, Strawberry Pupter, Ashri Inda, Moo Nir Amlani, Emily Umis, Crit Fax, Nikki Gordon Bloomfield, Blade Upton, Michael Godey, Jenny Mabel, Ligia M, Ver, Bella Lugosi, Corey and Vale, Hunkanin. Woo! Thank you, every single one of you. I adore you all. Again, patrons, I could not do this without you. You let me do this and be a weird dork and just sing weird voices at the end of every video. Thank you so much, and I just appreciate you supporting me being weird and dumb and silly, and I send you my absolute love going forward. Mwah. Truly, from the bottom of my heart, you are wonderful.